玛巴的特质以及其不断转世的目的，就是为了要让众生看到自信中清净、良善、无染的本质，将每一个人心中的光明牵引出来，并且扩展到全世界。这样的特质，在我们现今所见17世伽玛巴的身语意中便可得到证明。法王伽玛巴的言谈里，无时无刻地展现出对世界纷扰的悲悯，以及对和平到来的尽心竭力。在历代伽玛巴的修持中，止观禅修一直都是重要的一部分，也特别强调借由观照的功夫彰显日常生活中的本质实相。伽玛巴的传承教义极为重视与法义相契合的圣观。为了达到这样的修持，首先必须先由培养出离心等基本功课入门，再借由一步步增进的禅修，将心性中真实的智慧开展出来，并以这样的力量将众生带入和谐与相互尊重的光明中。
Karma bhajanam, karma bhajanam, karma bhajanam. Karma bhajano, karma bhajano. Please bow 3 times to the Jawang Karmapa. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Great Vajradhara Teva
관계事情中啊，现在可能家庭事情中吧，这样的，我们就也不能就说有那种，我这就我们说的这边在那边小了这样子了。今天，他妈，从哪里啊？你看说，打工者，怎么写？
So first, good evening to all of you.
这他妈，讲怎么写呢？这嘛，可是广大嘛兄弟，这里啊，我们是需要当，做工广大钱的，然后做工广大，我们是需要这里啊，你给下下我们都的。 제 다라지 삼로데 시라이 하면 수도 제장 안에 치다나니가 내 고마주샤이.
So sorry for last evening, absence of teaching, as well as this evening also. My voice is not good, and my head or mind is not clear. So both externally and internally, it's not very clear, and sorry for that.
아니 아주 아니 균기 미지 나라면 다와 아주 좋아지는 거 알아. 이 마우지래요. 가인스나 최냠네 그래지 개별로 이제 개연두산에 안에 장화 매대마 장화 문두바 잡아 지금 미기와다 진용무배 철이야 근데 장화 톱대버려 이제 가서 지금 초하라고 영대 영어스. 다시 초화디양, 저기 능수디. 에너지 교지래당 야나지 연대지래 내가 주지 삼당 과야지 이번에 가야사나다디 미망치리야 되지 초하라고 다 변하지 용료하다 변하 배 나라리네 그제 방용나래 지전에 장수 나라네 그제 유시베스 제자디 냠내기 제외 거기 안에 갈게 첨부처리에 유상에 맞추지 상당
In our everyday life, in our everyday ordinary experiences, what happens to us, pretty much to all of us, in common, is that when we incline towards the Dharma or aspire something dharmic, it seemed to be very difficult for us to generate. There seems to be no spontaneous, no sort of free will or freedom to be able to spontaneously generate the desired inclinations or aspirations. Yet on the other hand, when we generate worldly thoughts connected with our conflicting mental afflictions, it seemed to all happen quite voluntarily, quite spontaneously, and without any thing in the way of effort being necessary. So since this is something that actually takes place in our lives, occurs in our lives, obviously it's worth paying attention, drawing our attention towards it as to whether this is something that is good, serves some beneficial purpose, or whether the circumstance is something quite unfavorable. In either way, that is it something we need to seriously address. So this situation that I've talked about, I know it happens among Tibetan people, and maybe it is something that happens to you also. So in that case, in connection with our practice, how this presents as an obstacle is something we need to take a close look at.
다디 나랑게 삼단도 다디 코란지 진제 가져에 차외기 가져에 다지 유기 모에서 말해 차외 통한다든지 유기 모에네 유기원의 사람인데 딱 간다 진제기 시세 손안 딘데지래야디 연대기 차로지 맨로 성마란 쳔백스 아니 이나야디 초아 딘데기 초아 lep세 탐체 연대 이버 시통마디 이미네 시제 차네 지 겨드베 거수 라와 에지 가져지 매버죠 지 미겨 제베 거수 라와 이여바로 되지 시제 차네 보람지 좋아요나디 에지 고랑기 지 유기 다고랑 지 용단디 초아디 용단디 에너지 윤den지 버지가 초아디 이내야 다양 배 초아들의 중재 상마 연대에 버시에가 하고.
So from my own personal perspective of thinking, I feel this kind of experience, from the point of view of fundamentally speaking, it's good. There is good possibility. That is that this experience of when we practice Dharma, that there seems to be no freedom, a spontaneous expression, freedom in that sense. But when we engage in unwholesome activities, non-dharmic, that there seems to be some spontaneity of freedom. So, again, just for the sake of clear understanding, I'm not saying that all kinds of negative thoughts and this experience of lack of freedom when applying Dharma and just free flow when it comes to indulging in non-virtuous activities. I'm not saying all of it should be seen as good. I'm saying simply the basis of it, fundamentally speaking, there is good possibilities, good potentialities.
Gewa che yun du sa ne ji khashwe ji gewa rob che de chwa sa yun du sa ne ji rangi khashwe ji digi mang bu ji la ra ji sam dang ya su khashi bena da ji bena da ji na da me ko na nga la ru sa ya me na ji khashwe ane ji khashelia bena rubdu chungwa yimina ane ji zawa la ro da na ji khashwe zaze la ro de chona yu yo es yine yang ye samlia di bena nga ju ji gewe samta yin du sa ne o ji le thang bo bu ji gewe samta yin du sa ne gewe gi sam gewe ko le ya 미기에 삼바디 수이네야 영초야 영투야 감 이게 삼바 거지지 베지 슈침부지에 미냐 디파야야 미기와다 다나시 초화신 미기오 메이다 지 초화 당념 이제 초화신 영초야 영투야 이나양 아주 지 미기에 삼조 바나지 셰당 추침벌지 여비 이미나 아니 지게외 삼바디 조 용도 용만라 초아시네 게도 용만 단 너나 코랑 미기외 삼바냐 지긴하냐 네 대아지 쳐요 대내 인두산에 뒤 가르쳐도 열었잖아 개와 주베 거수 아주지 장와예바 파르다나야 땅 쳐봐 su lena ya len chop de ji chen do ya migiwe ji samba sa de gen du sa ne ji par ta na ya ta me ge su lena ya len ju ru sha me ge ta ga da ji migiwe ji she dang no da ji samba 냐지기가 내대야 쳐요. 드레지 시제 차네 드레지 개와 제베 거수지 장와 매바 somara 다지 개외 삼바 찍리아 대투야기지 장와 매바 지 미기외 제 뉴사 미기와 고란지 미기외 삼바 찍기 털어야 대투야가지 장와 예대버로 제제게지 초와야디 간다지 개와라 장와 예바 춘제지다 미기와라 지 장와 매바 춘제지 쇼르 과도르서
So how this is how so? That is how it is basically or fundamentally good. that is, for instance, when we engage in merit accumulating wholesome activities, some people have the notion that these merit accumulating wholesome activities are actually a source of depriving us of happiness that we experience, what we conceive of as happiness, worldly speaking, normally speaking. For instance, when we practice Dharma and we are to cultivate the outlook of egolessness or selflessness, then there is the concern, the conflicting concern that if we do this practice, maybe we're going to lose ourselves, lose self. Or that if you take to ordination, then you will lose the ability to love, to care, to extend affection, and the fear that you may lose something. So therefore, that lack of freedom in that sense, freedom to follow with the virtuous outlook or the engagement. And whereas when we are involved with some negative outlook, some non-virtuous activity, and then that there is freedom in the sense that it doesn't face any challenge. Not freedom in normal sense, freedom in the sense that it doesn't face any challenge, it doesn't face any obstacle. For instance, if one experiences anger, while one is experiencing tremendous anger, no other thoughts interfere it. There is experience of sort of fanatical outlook, a fixation to the experience of anger. One is basically stuck with it. But freedom in the sense that no other virtuous thoughts, or for that matter any other thoughts, interfere it. So from that point of view, I'm saying that when you are practicing something virtuous, Dharma, that you don't have actually there is, in other words, there's a freedom to have other things, even though it's not going exactly the way you want, but there's freedom for other possibilities. So when you are applying something virtuous, then in essence there is freedom, but in essence when you are involved with something non-virtuous, there is no freedom, you're stuck with it.
제가 양 가서에 예외 양내 체내 지 쇼도를 상하고 도바디 지라고 말했어. 가해서나 아니 미사를 주어해야 알았어. 거매야 알았어. 배나 담보 배나 클라로 지려야 가비에비나. 드네 뒤수 지려야 안 클라 데레 심부럽지. 칼라 자네 몸에 수수시베 칼라디 가서 시라 좋아하면 참 안다 칼라 사우디 그 가서 마보사지 보주고스 디디사 칼라 님버디 알려 당시었으네 안다 딱한다고 좋아지대스 제가 꼭 좋아테스자 칼라 님버디 시라 고요하면서 거기 콜려 당시었 ramsamala le da shabda marade yimi ta ko mugo yar choye bisan kwana jigar mi gona jige so chi choya je za ta ran si anda ju chue nyam nen che ne a da ji mang bu ji ga shui ta da ji ga shui ji sho ru le ane ga ju la ru le sa ya ki thoba de go ya ma kai sana ga ju ji ge lo le ya 개회 냠는 무투의 제트나 엔디들이야 뜻대버지 저 가서에 아주 더 뜻대버야 말았어 이내야 냠네 상부 초나 덥대고 지차로야 지단 유어태야 지랑 고매하지 않았어. 대유의 인상 내가 아주 덥대고 시작했어.
So from that point of view, one doesn't need to concern so much, or for that matter worry, that one is going to lose something. When applying the practice of Dharma, that one is going to be at a loss. Because changes take place. And in fact, more rewarding or better changes that can take place. And from that point of view, one does not need to worry unnecessarily. For instance, if one is used to eating certain kind of food, and now there comes a moment when one has the opportunity to eat something more delicious, better than what one used to eat, and then eating more of this new delicious food, one will be able to, in a way, let go of the food that one used to eat. If not really let go, but at least for sure one doesn't need that, because the other one is a good replacement. And so in this way, relative to this kind of situation, and it's not that one is going to continuously be missing or going through the sense of loss. And particularly, if one is able to practice Dharma in a consistent way, then one could begin to appreciate the simplicity that this would introduce into one's life.
Bena dang aro chimina nago kajueji chungdune ane chawe dingzu samara jumjung dingzu ro diji nalo ya dewe insa ane ji dingzu di nalo le ya ji jidenbe chawa mangbuji le ya ganggo ji jidenbe samba 삼조 삼바단 죄바 망부지야 강고치 야레스 강고 야레스 관 진주디나 이내야 디 강고 예버될 때네 지 가수에 나랑기 가수에 지 오늘 지 당에 디 라수사 정말 디 고도디 유미네야 드리지 총마송 소소롭지 시랑아리 용미도스 가인사나 지denbe ji samba ji zewe samba dang dana shi ji zazi samba di ane chue dang zhene yongdu sa ne lep che ji dang ane karshue ji wansar che ro lep che ro wane ji karshue pendo che ro ji yonggu yebe ji da sebre ma nga lang tong bre che zang 디비 균생기 엔다 간다 지된베 가조에 다지 지 삼바도 쥐어봐 되게 된 아주 지 뿌다로다 야로다 지 삼조 되게 럽체로다 하지 진지지 젠도 마도 지된베 삼바디 딘주자에 매바 체네 최 삼바 시장 로시네 수 주야지 갈래 가보래라 and
So in this way, if one is able to apply the practice of Dharma consistently, things could become simpler, more and more easier. In my own personal case, for instance, I've been in the situation of being in the monastic context since very little, and being a monk with the monastic protection, discipline, and in which situation that there are norms where one is to avoid many of the worldly activities and worldly engagements. So, given those restrictions, if you would, in my personal case, I don't feel loss. I don't feel the need that I don't have such and such worldly contacts, or that as a work that I'm not supposed to do. The affection or feelings of caring that one has when one is able to mix it with the outlook of the Dharma, then obviously that the effect becomes more expanded, expansive, and actually more amazing, in that it becomes vastly more beneficial. It is not that we become totally free of all kinds of worldly thinking. It is not even necessary. But the quality of our thoughts become better, more refined, and the outlook becomes more refined, more consistent, more consistent with that of the practice of the Dharma.
And 인하양아 주 그래야지 직된배 자외 녀도 쉬번나시 꽤 망보지 말아야 근데 저가래 답변아 차단이 있어야로디 직된배 자외 나로래야 집에주다 조르지 차단이부터 저야 차단이부디 지단 제비는 차단이부디에 양공원에 지 취해야 봐 가서 지 티아에 되지 저 차단이부디 아니 내가 쉬는 시지 고견이 매우차네 아니디가 유엔된도 공비 단사도 차단이 유엔된 공비 단에 차단이 견마 세네 이래 자여지 제
So, when I say that it's not possible to have any worldly, completely get rid of worldly outlook, and it's not necessary, in that in the general world, much of our experiences are around attachment and aversion. Varieties of the expressions of attachment and aversion, and that's normally what goes on. And but it is possible, it is not absolutely necessary to look at it in a very totally negative way, in that even aversion and attachment, which could have very negative consequences, can be approached from the point of view of steer them towards refinement, steer them towards more wholesome qualities. So thereby we are able to distill and get rid of the unwholesome aspect of desire and aversion, and engender and generate the more refined quality, aspect of the two.
Mame kutu dambara senje, nemu tongara chewara